Well, welcome to another edition of the Shoulder Tap Podcast. I appreciate you joining us today. I hope you will enjoy it. I thank you, Mike, because we have a great guest on today. Mark Denison is our guest. He's been with us numerous times over the years, and I'm glad to have him back on. But let me share a little bit about Mark before we get him talking about his ministry. But Mark has a ministry called There's Still Hope that he and his wife Beth began back in 2017. And Mark was a church planner and a senior pastor with three churches for over 31 years. Prior to that, he was a university board chairman, MBA chaplain, and has authored numerous books. His degrees include a Doctor of Ministry, a Master's of Divinity, a Master's in Recovery. And Mark is a certified PSAP and a member of the American Association of Christian Counselors. He's also a regular contributor to C3 Global Network. And each week, Mark works with individual clients, leads 7 freedom groups, and leads several couples groups along with his wife, Beth, who he has been married to since 1983. Mark, it's good to have you on, man. Appreciate you joining us.
Mike, it's great to be back. Just to update that, we're now up to 10 weekly freedom groups. And
oh, my gracious.
I should have told you, but yeah, we're doing great and love what you do. And it's an honor to be back with you today.
Tell people, I said that you're a certified PSAP. What is a PSAP? Some people may not know what that is.
Well, most people don't know what that is. That is a pastoral sex addiction professional. It's through the ITAP organization in Arizona. Don't ask me to tell you what ITAP stands for, but these are the guys that certify certified sex addiction therapists, trauma coaches, which is what my wife is, and others in this space. It's certification that's only been out there for about 5 years. Pretty rigorous training on for counseling, therapy, leading groups, learning all the science that's involved with addiction so that you can impart that to others, because I didn't want to do this ministry unless I had some sense of what I was doing. So we tried to get as educated as we could so we could help as many guys as we can.
No, that's good. That's great. And I know you have a story and a background to all that, and I appreciate it. But tell us a little bit about There's Still Hope ministry. Tell us about ministry, what it's all about, and how's it designed, or who is it designed to reach?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. We started this 8 years ago, early 2017. We basically exist to help men who struggle with unwanted sexual behaviors and their wives who have been traumatized because of their husband's unwanted sexual behaviors. And by that, we're really talking about porn and sex addiction. So what we do as a ministry, what I do is basically 3 things. One is what we call the 90-day recovery program, where I take up to 10 or 15 clients at a time, one-on-one for 90 days. We meet once a week for an hour. We go through my 90-day workbook, which has 90 daily devotions and written exercises on principles on how to break free from sexual addiction. So again, that's a 90-day process. So that's one of the 3 things we focus on. The second is what you mentioned a moment ago, the freedom groups. We use another workbook that I've written called the Life Recovery Plan. And I currently have 10 groups. 9 are done by Zoom. One is here in person in Bradenton, Florida. The Zoom groups, 2 of those are just for pastors. One of those is just for doctors. And we currently have about 160 guys that are in those 10 groups that meet to just maintain our sobriety and talk about things that help keep us sober. We do a different topic every week for an entire year. The third thing I do is I work with my wife to do couples work. We do couples groups. And so when she's working with her clients that are married to a sex addict, and I'm working with the guys, many times as they work in their recovery, they then need couples work. So we've written a couples workbook. It's a 12-week study that we take couples through. Zoom groups, the next group will start in March. So I focus on the 90-day program. I focus on groups, focus on couples.
Well, great, and no, that's a difficult ministry, because that's something that men particularly kind of hide within their psyche, so to speak. They don't like to talk about that. They know it's a problem. They know it's an issue. but they're scared to bring it to the forefront of their life and let people know they're struggling with that issue.
Yeah, especially in the church, and everything we do is Christ-centered. You're exactly right. There's a lot of shame tied up in it. It's a lot of people in the sex addiction world talk about this as the new AA. The only difference is that with AA, that's very mainstream now. Someone can say in church, I'm an alcoholic, and we put our arm around them, we love on them, we pray for them. But when someone says, I've got a porn issue or a sex addiction issue, there's a lot of shame tied up in that.
Yeah.
And so the first step is to step forward and say, I have a problem. And when people are willing to do that, we want to be a safe place for them.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't understand it's never had an issue in that area. Because I've heard it myself when people say I have a porn issue, and they just say, well, just stop it. And it's kind of like alcoholism. It's not something you can just easily stop. You've got to have that support group around you and in that process that can help you work through that. So
60% of addicts have dual addictions, and there are substance addictions, and then they're behavioral. Whereas AA is substance, this is behavioral, but 60% have crossover addictions. And every guy I've ever worked with, and there's been hundreds of them, who is also an alcoholic, without exception, has said this is the hardest one to beat. And the reason for that is God did not create us for alcohol. That's a learned habit, but he did create us for sex. Right. And when he made man and woman, he said it is very good. So that the struggle with alcohol, you quit alcohol if you're an alcoholic completely. Whereas with sexual addiction, you don't quit sex if you're married. I mean, the hope is that you have a healthy sexual life within marriage. And so there's a lot of intricate things interwoven there that make this more challenging.
Oh, yeah. Is churches beginning to recognize this now? Are they beginning to, in your goings around, places you speak at and people you talk to, the churches are beginning to recognize there is an issue within the church, and they're starting to develop methods for gals too, because I know gals have this issue too, not as prevalent as guys, but to help them to walk through this.
Yeah, the key word is when you said, are they starting to recognize it? The key word is starting. We know from data that as of about 15 years ago, 7% of churches ever address this, ever offer anything for this. A new study that just came out about 2 months ago shows that number is bumped up very slightly to 9%. So
wow,
still way behind, but it's starting to happen a little bit. And the good news is that there are some churches that are offering a lot in this area, a lot of groups. And so men that go to other churches will navigate to that church. And that actually works out because the last place most guys want to go to for a group is their own church because they're ashamed. And so they're going to drive across town anyway. And so it is growing, and there is more acceptance of it as churches recognize that the percentage of men that are looking at porn every week within the church is 62%. Outside the church is 64%. So it's essentially the same.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
almost different.
Not at all. Not at all. And 37% of pastors. And so they're one of 4 professions that struggle with this more than any other specific profession. And so the church is catching on, but it's going to take some time.
Well, yeah, interesting. You say that, it's like 8% of the churches are recognizing. You realize statistically, when you're dealing with men's ministry, only 8% of the churches has any kind of an active, vibrant ministry to men. So it kind of correlates to some degree there. It's kind of interesting in that respect.
Totally. Almost without exception. It's funny you say that. The churches that do address this or offer something for guys are churches that have a healthy men's ministry. And as you know, more than half the population is actually single over the age of 25, 52%. So there is a ton of men out there that they don't have a couples thing they can go to. All they have is men's ministry. And when a church doesn't offer that, there's no place for them to land. And so it's the same struggle that we have in this area.
Yeah. Good. Well, you've written a number of books, and I've read a few of those books, and I think you've even asked me to endorse one of those books over the years, and I appreciate appreciate your confidence with me with that. But you've got a couple of new books that you just recently told me about that's come out. And one of them's called Recovery Rules. Let's talk about that a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what Recovery Rules is all about.
Well, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. I've written 11 books on recovery, and that was my favorite or most fun project because as the years would go by, my own recovery, and I've been in recovery for 12 years now myself, I will have these different truisms or thoughts that just kind of pop into my head that are sort of a unique way of saying something. And so I'd start jotting them down, and the list just kept growing. And so eventually I decided, why don't I turn this into a book? And so the list got to 100. And once it got to 100, I said, okay, I got to stop. And so I wrote the book, Recovery Rules. So it's 100 truisms about recovery. And so for each one, there is, like, it'll say Rule 53, and it's a couple of pages, Rule 62, a couple of pages. We have scripture in here, some good quotes, a lot of good anecdotes, but it's very, very simple, straightforward. In fact, I've taken this, it's been so popular with a lot of guys that I now take a different rule each day and I send it out by text message.
Wow.
And we have an audience of over 500 men that every morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time, they get a recovery rule in their phone. Doesn't cost anything. Costs me a little bit, doesn't cost them anything. And so we send these out by phone. So if anyone watching or listening would like to receive the recovery rules into your phone, just let me know. Just get me your cell number. I'll add you to the list, and this goes out every day. So these are 100 truisms, just simple statements that are easy to remember so that every day as we think about these, they help us stay on track.
Is that just sending you an email to your email, letting you know they would like to be on that?
Yeah, they could. Yep, that'd be the best way. Mark, M-A-R-K, Mark at there'sstillhope.org. If they reach out and ask for that, I also send out a daily devotional that is called the Recovery Minute, because it just takes a minute to read. If anyone would like to receive that, you can email me as well. You can go to our website and sign up for that at there'sstillhope.org. There's a place where you can subscribe for that. Now, we have about 1,200 people that receive that devotional each morning. We'd love to add others to that list. But yeah, Recovery Rules is 100 very simple statements that I think can be really, really powerful in helping guys to find and maintain their sobriety.
Can you give us a couple of examples of what your truism is and how you address those?
Absolutely. My favorite is rule number 1. And it says, if you're 90% in, you're 100% out. And where that comes from is that I've seen so many guys that try to get sober from their porn or sex addiction, and they fall short because they treat it as a hobby rather than a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. If they're going to break free, they've got to go to meetings. They've got to be desperate. They've got to be hungry. They've got to do therapy. They might have to work the 12 steps. They need to be working with a professional, a mentor, a coach, a sponsor. And if they just kind of dabble at it, then they're never going to make it. And so the rule is that if you're 90% in, you might as well just be 100% out. Becoming sober in this area and breaking free is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And I use as an example for that, John chapter 5, the paralytic. Jesus looked at him and he said, do you want to be well? John 5:6. In the original language, there's an emphasis on want that means a strength of wanting. Are you desperate? Do you really want it? If you're not desperate, you won't find it. So that's probably my favorite. And I've got a bunch of them, and tell me when to stop, but I'll give you another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Addiction is not a bad problem. It's a bad solution. We look at any addiction. There's 156 of them, according to the American Psychological Association. We look at addiction and we say, well, that's a bad problem. As you say, just stop it. Just don't do it. The problem with that never works because it's not a problem as much as a solution. I'm turning to pornography or sexual addiction or affairs or reaching out to women or looking up images. I'm doing this because of something inside of me that's missing. It's an intimacy disorder. And so it's always the response really to 3 things: trauma, abuse, and isolation. In my own story, I have trauma, physical, sexual abuse. I've got issues with my dad going all the way back, family issues, physical abuse issues, other physical issues, and isolation issues just from stuttering and other issues I had as a child. And so you turn to something like this because of whatever's lacking. So this rule says that addiction isn't a problem as much as a solution. And so to fix that, you don't focus on the habit, you focus on what's behind it. So that when you work on what is causing that, then that's when solving the problem becomes more manageable.
Yeah, that's good. I tell you, I've looked at some of the truisms you have here, and a couple of my favorites, and if you could expand on them, I'd appreciate it. One is free cheese is always available in the mousetrap. Uh, that's pretty thought provoking when you think about it. How did you address that one?
Yeah, I was up in the attic one day checking on my mouse traps, and I thought, these mice have it pretty easy. They've got it pretty good. They don't have to go hunting for food. All they got to do is come to one of my mouse traps, and I'll give them all the cheese they want. It's free.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's going to cost them something after the instantaneous pleasure. And so for anyone who's looking for a quick hit sexually, there's a million ways to find it. And it's free. You don't have to pay for it. And that's anything from pornography online, although I'm happy to report that the most popular porn site in the world has just been banned by 14 states in the United States starting January 1st, which is great. Your state, my state, I believe, are both two of those. But there's always places to find that next hit. There's free cheese, but it's a trap. It always looks good, but it's a trap. It takes you further than you want to go, keeps you longer than you want to stay, and it costs you more than you want to pay. So if you're willing to have your life destroyed, as happens with the mouse and the mousetrap, the cheese is out there. But the enemy doesn't tell you that part. The enemy just says, here's the quick hit. No one's going to see it. No one knows what you're looking at on your phone. Nobody knows if you're chatting with someone. No one knows about the affair. No one knows about the masturbation. No one sees that. But at the end of the day, it always costs you something.
Yeah. Sooner or later, it's going to cost you. Let's go. And one more that I kind of think of is kind of interesting, and it's true, is what you think today, you will do tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a cycle. Patrick Carnes, who wrote Out of the Shadows, gives a 4-step cycle to acting out with pornography or sexual addiction. He uses some pretty academic language. I've simplified it with shorter words and 6 steps. And this is the cycle we go through. I think it, so it starts up here. Then I plan it. How am I going to act on this? Then I do it. It's the act. And then I hate it. I always regret it. And then I cover it. I don't want anyone to see it. And then I go do it again. So I think it, I plan it, I do it, I hate it, I cover it, I do it again. I think it, I plan it, I do it, I hate it, I cover it, I do it again. But it always starts up here because the biggest sex organ in the body is the brain. And so when I take images in, the eye is connected to the brain. And so when I take in those images, when I store those images, what I have in my brain, when I start thinking about it, fantasy, or what we call euphoric recall, as I think about that, what I think about today is what I'm going to do tomorrow. And then what I do tomorrow is what becomes a habit after that. So the focus is not, for me in my ministry, is not to tell guys, quit doing the behavior. My focus is quit thinking the thoughts, because it is, as they say in SA, which is Sexaholics Anonymous, they define sobriety as progressive victory over lust, which is really good. That's why Jesus talked about it. If a man looks at a woman with lust, he's committed adultery already. So my focus is control your thinking, your thinking pattern. And if you can do that, the action will take care of itself.
No, that's it. That's some good stuff. And I would encourage you guys to look up Mark's book, Recovery Rules, and pick that up. And there's other books out there. I'm sure you can just go on to your favorite book site and put his name in as an author, and you get a list of all his books that he's done. And I appreciate it. By the way, just for a matter of note, if you're wanting to know how to get on his mailing list or how to get on that daily text that he sends you, his email will be in our show notes for the show. So just be sure to look that up, and you'll be able to see that. So anyway, let me get back to a little bit to the actual work in pornography and who's it affecting a little bit. Is there a particular age group that seems to be more prevalent in the pornography issues? I mean, is it mostly the
Yes.
millennials, the senior adults, or what group seems
Yeah.
to be the biggest
Statistically, the
issue?
younger you go, the worse it is.
Mm,
And that's because of the advent of the internet. So
hmm
those of us that were raised in the 50s and 60s were raised in a life that didn't know the internet. So for us to find pornography meant finding a magazine somewhere.
Right.
But to put this in perspective, Playboy magazine, the most popular porn magazine of all time, went out of business because of the internet. In 3 days, one porn site gets more visits than Playboy had for an entire year
Oh
on
my
its most
gracious.
popular year. 3 days. That's just one site, and there are thousands of sites. More people are going to porn online than Netflix and all sporting events combined. And I mean, it's insane. And so the younger crowd, who's really adept with technology, that's where they found it. We know
Hmm
the average age that people begin viewing porn is 11, and probably younger now. That's an older data point, but there's not new data since then. So the younger you go, and the other thing is, and you kind of mentioned this earlier when you talked about women as well as men, when you get under the age of 30, the percentage of women among all people looking at porn is 40. So 40% of viewers are women, 60% are men. Whereas the
Wow.
older crowd, it's 90-10 as you get up into the 40s and 50s. And so now women are coming up, almost as many women are viewing this as men. So it just keeps growing exponentially in the younger crowd.
Wow. That's that's just amazing to me, and I'm sure it is to a lot of other people about how this is affecting, especially our younger generation, and see it. And I guess that's the reason why we see so much of sexual innuendos and even sexual scenes on our TV shows and our movies these days. It seems to be almost considered part of normal life these days, and sex outside of marriage, that seems to be part of normal life,
Yep.
and it's very disturbing.
Do you ever watch old TV comedies from like the 60s? You ever see any of those old
Oh yeah,
shows?
I love watching those old shows like that.
We were watching an episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show the other day, and
Right?
and there was one of the guest stars on there was they thought he was out to lunch with a girlfriend. It turned out to
Yeah,
be a doctor, and it's like so taboo. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. And now it's
yeah,
just mainstream. In fact,
yeah.
this recent study that just came out showed that 51% of people who look at pornography who are going to church every week think it's okay. And so even, I mean, half the people in the church, they're doing it. Not only are they doing it, but they're saying it's okay. It's not a problem. And that
Yeah.
number just keeps on growing. So, and the problem is what we tolerate today will dominate tomorrow. And so if I'm tolerating this now in my life or in the church's life or society, it's going to take over tomorrow.
Man, that's unreal. Well, Mark, you're going to be with us in about a month and a half, 2 months with the ISI conference here in North Carolina, here in Wilmington, and you're going to be doing a breakout session. I think it's called Porn Phenomenal. Why don't you share a little bit, without giving too much detail, about what you're going to be talking about, and so guys can anticipate attending your session.
Going to be as practical as possible. We're going to give the 4 basic tools to breaking free. We'll talk some about the statistics. We'll have our books that are available at our cost, and look forward to meeting some guys. Have a lot of resources that will be there at our table. But we'll talk about the tools that it takes to actually break free from this. So we invite anyone to come by and spend some time with us there who is vulnerable enough and open enough to say, okay, give me some really practical principles on things I can do, because this is a struggle in my life. And I
Mhm.
want to find lasting freedom from this. I love the Lord with all my heart, but this has a stronghold, and I just need some principles on how to break free. For that person, I promise we'll have answers.
Oh, super. Yeah. And I look forward to it. I probably will step in too, because I'm always interested in how we can really minister to other people, because it is a serious issue within the Christian community and the believers community. Uh, and we don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about it enough to help guys to understand that what they may be struggling with is not, they may not be the only one struggling with that issue. we're here to help. We're here to help and do whatever we can to help you walk through this struggle and be able to put it behind them. And I appreciate everything you do, Mark. It's great that what you and your wife does to help couples out, because I know when that subject comes up, it can be a very difficult discussion that couples can have when one or the other one confesses that they have an issue in that area. So.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you promoting this so many different ways. And what a great opportunity to be there. Great speakers there at the conference on March 1st. Can't wait to see you. Look forward to meeting some guys there.
Great. Well, I want to give you a minute as we kind of wrap up here. I want to give you a minute to kind of share whatever is on your heart, to encourage our listeners out there in what you do and in your ministry, and they're reaching out to God to help them to walk through this particular issue.
Yeah, I'd love to. Guys, any of y'all that need help and are struggling in this area, please reach out to me. There's no judgment, no condemnation here. I've been there. I walked in a sexual addiction for 30 years myself. Cost me everything. It was horrible, but I've had freedom for a long time now. I know what works, and we can help you with biblical principles to find freedom in this area. Just reach out, Mark at therestillhope.org. You're welcome to text me as well or call me on my cell number, my phone, which is 941-526-4700. If not me, find someone to get help, because this is a huge pandemic affecting the church, the body of Christ, especially men, and we want to help you. So check out our website, therestillhope.org. Love to have you sit in on one of our freedom groups. Would love to work with you personally. We want to help you any way that we can.
Amen. Mark, I thank you. I appreciate you being on today. And those contact information that Mark just shared with you will be in our show notes if you want to reach out to him. And I would strongly encourage you to do that if you're struggling with this issue, or if you know someone who is struggling with this issue and you want to find out how you can help them out, what you can do to be able to help them with this particular issue. Mark, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Mike. Always good to see you.
Good to see you, man. And I thank you for listening to the Shoulder Tap Podcast. And I hope you will join us next time on the Shoulder Tap Podcast.